It's that time of year once again. The perfect season to binge horror films all month long. But with so many scary movies that go completely under the radar, it can be difficult to choose a good one to watch. So like last year, I'm going to recommend you 5 horror films you should check out this October, if you haven't already. Again, I'm striving away from films that many have already seen or heard of, like Smile, while also avoiding too many recent films that are still very much within the public consciousness, like Talk to Me. Instead, I wanted to highlight films that many may not be aware of or are overshadowed by some of the more popular horror films out there. This list is by no means a top 5 or anything like that, as I didn't want any of these films to outweigh another, so this list is in no particular order. And of course, I will try to remain as spoiler-free as possible. Starting off with the 2021 film, Last Night in Soho. Whenever I discover a new horror film made by one of my favorite directors, my expectations immediately shoot up, and this film met those expectations in stride. An aspiring young fashion designer moves from a rural home to the bustling city of London to pursue her dreams. After failing to fit in with the local peers, she begins to have dreams and visions of 1960s London. Living vicariously through the eyes of a young prostitute, she quickly becomes aware of the city's sinister perversions and the reality of the limelight. This film was directed by Edgar Wright, whose previous works included Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and Baby Driver. But despite coming from such an acclaimed director and receiving generally positive reviews from critics, the film is unfortunately considered a bomb, only grossing about half of its initial budget in the box office. It's a shame not many people have seen this film either, as it boasts in visual flair, tense moments, as well as incorporating Wright's signature style in every shot. The film does deviate from the director's previous fast-paced and humorous ventures, opting for a more serious narrative, yet it's done so masterfully here that it really showcases his range as a filmmaker. Last Night in Soho is a disturbing and visual spectacle. If you're a fan of Wright's directorial style, this film will not disappoint. Since I love the classics just as much as the contemporary, I'd like to recommend the 1960s French film, Eyes Without a Face. While black and white features aren't everyone's go-to cinema experience, I highly recommend giving this one a shot. After a freak car accident that mingles the face of a young woman, her father, a doctor, plots to give her a new face. Sheltering his daughter at home and behind a featureless mask, the doctor proceeds to kidnap beautiful women throughout the city, surgically removing their faces and attempting to graft them onto his daughter. As a fan of the French New Wave, it's so exciting to see a horror film coming out of this movement. While the film tends to lack in terror for the most part, it more than makes up for it in the narrative. The eventual reveal of the daughter's distorted face had to have been my favorite scene, as it was beautifully paced. Although the film wasn't warmly received when it was first released, it has since become critically regarded as a cinematic marvel, and has influenced many well-known directors like John Carpenter and John Woo, as well as being the inspiration for a song by Billy Idol. Eyes Without a Face is a haunting piece of cinema that still holds up to this day. On the off chance that you're in the mood for a French classic this month, you should definitely consider this one. My next recommendation is a personal favorite of mine, The Killing of a Sacred Deer 2017. If you've seen my previous horror film recommendations video, you'll know that I love the majority of the films distributed by 824, and this one is one of the best. A surgeon who previously failed to save the life of a man begins to frequently meet with the man's son out of compassion. When the teenager's actions become too personal, the surgeon forces distance between them. Out of spite and revenge for his father, the boy puts a curse on the surgeon's family that slowly kills each of them, forcing the surgeon to make a difficult decision. The film is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, whose works include The Lobster, The Favorite, and the upcoming Poor Things. Much like some of his other films, this one features idiosyncratic delivery of dialogue, leading to humorously awkward moments in an otherwise eerie psychological horror. Every aspect of this film, from its visuals and sound down to its pacing and acting, is superb, and they each complement one another to create a surreal and enveloping viewing experience. The Killing of a Sacred Deer is absolutely worth checking out, especially if you love a strange and macabre story. Perhaps you're looking for something that's not as scary, but still incorporates elements of horror in unique ways? Then you should totally check out 2017's A Ghost Story. This technically isn't a horror film, but it does facilitate some of the tropes and cleverly turns them on their head. After passing away from a car accident, the main character awakens as a ghost and returns to his home. Unable to interact much with the world around him, the ghost is forced to observe his once home as it changes ownership throughout the years. Telling a haunted house story through the lens of the ghost is equal parts brilliant and sorrowful. The film features very minimal dialogue and action, yet still makes for a powerful drama. Even though the protagonist is completely featureless, the acting and direction somehow allows for this simple bedsheet ghost to exude emotion, creating an incredibly empathetic narrative. A Ghost Story is a beautifully haunting drama that is sure to leave you in tears by the end. Last, I'd like to recommend the most contemporary film on this list, as it was just released in North America earlier this year, Skinamarink. Analog horror has been a fairly prevalent genre here on YouTube, and seeing these techniques utilized in a feature film is just incredible to me. Two children wake up alone in the middle of the night, with objects around the house gradually disappearing. As more and more strange events transpire, the children are separated by a voice beckoning them from the darkness. Regarding traditional filmmaking, this is as strange and experimental as they come, especially for those who aren't aware of the analog horror subgenre. The film is extremely slow-paced, and it can be difficult to decipher what is happening on screen sometimes, but these aspects serve to enhance the suspense and curiosity of the narrative. There are a number of surprising instances in this film that stuck with me long after it was over. Skinamarink is a gripping and genre-defining experimental horror film. If you ever loved an analog horror series or ARG here on the internet, this film is a must-watch. So those were 5 horror films I recommend you to watch this month. Make sure to come back and let me know what your thoughts on them were down in the comments. And while you're down there, if you have a horror film that you'd like to recommend, please give it a shout out. I'm always looking for more horror movies to watch during October, so your suggestions are very much appreciated. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Have a spooky day! Bye bye!